The sun rose gently over the quiet village, spilling warm golden light over the dusty paths and small wooden houses. In one corner of the village, a market began to awaken, with the sounds of merchants setting up their stalls, and the chatter of neighbors greeting each other. Among them walked Nayeli, a young Apache woman who towered above most people around her. She moved with a quiet confidence, her long dark hair swaying slightly as she walked. Many people looked at her with curiosity, sometimes even with fear, because she was unusually tall and strong. Yet, those who took the time to notice her face saw the gentleness in her eyes, a softness that seemed to tell stories of longing and hope. Nayeli had grown up in the wide open spaces of the nearby plains, where her family taught her the skills of the land and the ways of her people. Her strength had always been admired in her tribe, but outside, in the village, it often set her apart. Children stared, women whispered, and men sometimes avoided meeting her gaze. It was not just her height that made her different. It was the aura of independence she carried with her. Nayeli was used to standing alone, solving problems on her own, and keeping her feelings private. Still, in her heart, there was a quiet yearning, a wish for someone to see her not just as a tall girl, but as a person who had fears, dreams, and a tender side. At the same time, Samuel, a young farmer, was preparing his small stall for the day's market. Samuel was quiet and shy. He had grown up in this village, learning to tend to the soil and care for animals, but he had always preferred the company of nature to that of people. Samuel's life was simple and predictable. Every morning he would wake up before the sun, feed the chickens, water the plants, and prepare vegetables for the market. He didn't like loud noises, and large crowds made him uncomfortable. Yet, there was a calmness in him that seemed to belong to the earth itself. His eyes were observant, taking in details that others missed, the way a leaf glistened after morning dew, the way the wind danced through the trees, or the soft hum of life in the village. As the market filled with people, Nayeli walked past Samuel's stall, her eyes scanning the fresh vegetables neatly arranged in wooden crates. Samuel noticed her immediately. He had seen her before in the village, but today something felt different. Perhaps it was the way she carried herself, or the subtle kindness in her gaze. He felt a mixture of curiosity and nervousness. Usually, he would lower his eyes and continue his work, but there was something about Nayeli that drew him in, something he could not ignore. Nayeli stopped at his stall, carefully examining the tomatoes and carrots. Her hands were large but gentle, as she picked up a ripe tomato, inspecting its color and firmness. Samuel cleared his throat, his voice barely above a whisper. "Good morning. These are fresh. Picked today." He looked down at his hands, trying not to seem too awkward, but every small movement felt clumsy in front of her. Nayeli smiled, a small but warm expression. "I can see that. They look very good." Her voice was soft, but there was a strength in it, a sense of self-assuredness that made Samuel straighten his back unconsciously. He tried to reply with something that sounded confident, but all he could manage was a quiet, "Thank you." The conversation could have ended there, but Nayeli, sensing his shyness, decided to continue. "Do you grow all of these yourself?" she asked, genuinely interested. Samuel nodded, finding it easier to speak about his work than about himself. He explained how he woke up early, planted each seed, and cared for the vegetables every day. Nayeli listened attentively, occasionally nodding or asking a simple question. For Samuel, her attention was new and comforting. No one had asked him about his work before in such a patient and kind way. As the morning went on, Nayeli and Samuel talked quietly among the sounds of the bustling market. They shared small stories about the weather, the crops, and the little events of the village. Nayeli told Samuel about her childhood in the plains, the lessons she had learned from her parents, and the walks she used to take in the open fields. Samuel found himself opening up slowly, telling her about the animals he cared for, the plants he loved to grow, and even the moments when he felt lonely in the village. Despite the difference in their personalities, there was a sense of connection that neither could explain. Nayeli admired Samuel's gentleness and the way he noticed small details that most people overlooked. Samuel admired Nayeli's strength. But more importantly, he admired the kindness that shone through her large presence. It was a meeting of contrasts, her strength and his softness, her confidence and his shyness, and yet, somehow, it felt natural, as if their worlds were meant to touch. At one point, a child ran past, bumping into Nayeli's arm. She steadied herself, smiling at the child, while Samuel helped pick up the basket the child had knocked over. Their hands brushed briefly, and in that simple moment, an unspoken understanding passed between them. It was a small, everyday gesture, yet it carried a significance. Both of them felt quietly. They realized that they could rely on each other, even in minor ways, and that comfort, however subtle, could be powerful. As the market began to slow down, Nayeli bought some vegetables and thanked Samuel warmly. "I'll see you again soon," she said, with a sparkle in her eyes. Samuel nodded, feeling a warmth he had not known he could feel. I'll be here," he replied, his words simple but sincere. She smiled once more and walked away, leaving Samuel standing behind his stall, thinking about the strange but beautiful connection he had just experienced. For Nayeli, that morning was a reminder that life could offer unexpected companionship, even in places she had never thought possible. For Samuel, it was a glimpse into a world beyond his quiet routines, a world where someone could see him for who he truly was, without judgment or fear. Both of them returned home that evening, carrying the memory of the encounter with them, knowing that something significant had begun, though neither fully understood how it would unfold. Days turned into weeks, and Nayeli continued to visit the market. Each visit brought new conversations, shared laughter, and silent understanding. Samuel began to feel anticipation for her presence, a feeling he had never experienced before. And though both remained cautious and shy in different ways, the bond that had begun in a simple morning encounter grew steadily. It was a gentle beginning, almost invisible to the rest of the village. Yet it held the potential to change both of their lives forever. Even at night, as the village grew quiet and the stars appeared in the sky, Nayeli thought about Samuel. She thought about the calm way he listened, the quiet strength in his work, and the gentleness in his eyes. She realized that perhaps life was not just about being strong or independent, it was also about connection, trust, and finding someone who could understand your heart. Samuel, on the other hand, reflected on Nayeli's presence with a sense of wonder. He had always felt alone in the world, but now he sensed that someone remarkable had noticed him, someone who could make life feel less heavy and more meaningful. And so, the stage was set. Two very different people, brought together by chance and circumstance, began a journey of understanding, companionship, and quiet affection. The market, once just a place for buying and selling, had become a place of meeting hearts, a place where loneliness could meet recognition, and a place where something as simple as a conversation could mark the beginning of a lifelong story. Nayeli returned home after the market, her mind still thinking about Samuel. The day had been ordinary, yet meeting him had left a warmth in her heart that she hadn't felt in a long time. Usually, she spent her days moving from one task to another, helping with chores, tending to animals, or learning the old traditions from the elders. But now, a new thought lingered. Someone had noticed her. Not her height, not her strength, but the person she was inside. That realization made her both excited and a little nervous. Though she was strong and capable in every sense, Nayeli often felt a quiet sadness. Her size and the confidence she projected made others assume she didn't need anyone, that she could handle everything on her own. While she took pride in her strength, she also longed for someone to share her days with, someone who could see beyond appearances. Her friends and relatives were kind, but no one seemed to truly understand what it felt like to stand out and yet feel invisible. Her strength sometimes became a barrier rather than a gift, and the feeling of being alone lingered quietly, even when people were around. That evening, Nayeli sat near the fire outside her home, watching the flames dance in the night. She thought about her parents, who had passed when she was younger. They had been her world, her support, and her teachers. Losing them had forced her to grow faster than she should have, to take care of herself in ways that many others her age didn't have to. She missed their guidance and their comforting words, but in that quiet evening, she realized that part of the pain she carried wasn't just about loss, it was about yearning for someone to understand her heart, someone to walk beside her through life. Meanwhile, Samuel returned to his small home after the market, carrying the vegetables that had not yet been sold. The day had passed normally for him, yet he couldn't stop thinking about Nayeli. She was different from anyone he had met before, strong, confident, and yet gentle. She had asked questions about his work, and she had listened without judgment, without pretending to know everything. That simple kindness had touched him deeply. He had spent most of his life feeling invisible, blending into the background, and rarely speaking up. But Nayeli's attention made him feel seen, like a small light had been turned on in his quiet, hidden world. Samuel sat by his window, looking out at the fields he tended. The wind rustled through the crops, carrying with it the scent of soil and morning dew. He thought about the way Nayeli had smiled, how her eyes seemed to hold stories he wanted to hear. He smiled quietly to himself, realizing that even a brief encounter could have a profound effect on a person's heart. For the first time in a long while, he felt anticipation for the next market day, when he might see her again. He wasn't sure why, and he didn't understand all the feelings stirring inside him. But he knew one thing: he wanted to know her better. The next few days passed slowly, each filled with the usual chores and routines. Nayeli woke early, practicing the skills she had learned from her elders, tending to small animals, and walking through the plains near her home. Yet, even in the midst of her busy life, thoughts of Samuel would come uninvited. She would imagine the conversations they had, the soft tone of his voice, and the careful way he treated everything around him. His shyness, which might have discouraged others, only made her feel protective of him, as if he were a delicate part of the world that needed attention. Samuel, too, went about his days quietly, caring for his farm, feeding animals, and preparing vegetables for the next market. Yet, he found himself watching the path leading to the market, wondering if Nayeli would appear. He imagined her arriving, her tall frame moving gracefully among the stalls, and his heart would race in a way it never had before. He caught himself smiling at small thoughts of her. And for the first time, he noticed how much a single person's presence could change the rhythm of his life. One afternoon, Nayeli went to visit an elder woman in her community, someone who had guided her since childhood. The woman was small, with silver hair and a gentle voice, but her eyes were sharp and wise. Nayeli shared her feelings, her loneliness, and the ache of wanting someone to see her as she truly was. "It's not just about having someone near," she confessed. "It's about someone understanding me. People notice my height, my strength, but not my heart. Sometimes, I feel invisible, even when everyone is around me." The elder woman listened carefully, nodding as Nayeli spoke. "Strength can be a gift, Nayeli," she said, "but it can also be a burden if it separates you from others. You have a kind heart, and one day, someone will see that heart. Not just your strength. Be patient, trust in the people who cross your path, and let them in slowly. You don't need to carry the world alone." These words lingered in Nayeli's mind as she walked back home. She thought about Samuel and how easy it had been to speak with him, how he had listened without rushing or judging. Perhaps, she thought, this shy young farmer could be someone who would see her for who she truly was. But she also knew that trust had to be built slowly, and she wasn't willing to let her heart rush forward without care. At the market the following morning, Nayeli approached Samuel's stall again. Her steps were measured, and she smiled softly when she saw him arranging vegetables. Samuel looked up and almost froze at the sight of her. He smiled shyly, his hands still busy with crates, but his heart raced. "Good morning," he said, his voice a little stronger than the last time. "Good morning," Nayeli replied. She examined the vegetables, picked up a few, and asked questions about how they were grown. Samuel answered with growing confidence, explaining his methods and showing pride in his work. They laughed at small mistakes, Samuel accidentally knocking over a crate, Nayeli teasing him gently about his carefulness. Each interaction was small, ordinary, yet it carried an extraordinary warmth for both of them. As they spoke, Nayeli felt a comfort she had rarely experienced. Here was someone who noticed her, who treated her as an equal, and who had a quiet kindness that touched her heart. Samuel, in turn, felt a sense of ease and safety he had never felt before. Their conversations were simple, but they were meaningful. There was no need for grand gestures or declarations, only a shared understanding that each person was willing to be present for the other. Days passed, and their visits to the market became a gentle routine. Nayeli began to look forward to seeing Samuel, and Samuel began to anticipate her presence with quiet excitement. Yet, both remained cautious. Nayeli remembered the elder woman's advice to trust slowly, and Samuel was aware of his own shyness, knowing that rushing forward could overwhelm him. Their connection grew quietly, like a seed taking root beneath the soil. Invisible to others but strong and steady, evenings were often spent reflecting on their encounters. Nayeli would sit by her small fire, thinking about Samuel's gentle demeanor and the way he seemed to notice things others ignored. She realized that what she had been missing was not just companionship, but a sense of being truly seen and understood. Samuel, meanwhile, would tend to his crops under the fading light, replaying their conversations in his mind. He felt a sense of peace he had not known before, a feeling that perhaps life could be shared with someone who valued him quietly, without pressure or expectation. Their growing bond became a source of subtle joy. The villagers noticed their friendliness, but no one guessed the depth of understanding forming between the two. Nayeli and Samuel were learning each other's worlds, slowly, her strength and his gentleness, her confidence and his quiet reflection. It was a partnership built on patience, observation, and genuine care. Though words were few, the connection was undeniable. And so, life went on, ordinary yet quietly extraordinary for both of them. Nayeli continued her walks in the plains, tending to animals, and practicing the traditions of her people. Samuel continued his careful work on the farm, nurturing the soil and the crops with steady hands. Yet, each day carried a small excitement, a small hope, because they knew that the other would be there at the market, waiting, sharing, and understanding in a way no one else had before. In these moments, both Nayeli and Samuel began to realize that loneliness could be eased, not by grand events or dramatic gestures, but by the presence of someone who simply cared, someone who listened, and someone who saw the heart beneath the surface. And though neither fully understood the journey ahead, they knew that their connection, gentle and quiet as it was, could grow into something lasting and meaningful if only they continued to nurture it with patience, understanding, and kindness. The sun was just beginning to rise over the fields when Nayeli set out for the market again. The morning air was crisp and filled with the scent of damp earth and wildflowers. Birds called to each other from the nearby trees, and the quiet sounds of the village waking up filled the atmosphere with a gentle energy. Nayeli's thoughts, however, were not on the beauty of the morning, but on Samuel. She wondered if he would be at his stall, arranging his vegetables as carefully as always, and if he would smile when he saw her. There was a nervous excitement inside her, a mixture of hope and uncertainty, because today she felt ready to speak more openly than before. Samuel, as usual, arrived early to prepare his stall. He arranged the vegetables in neat rows, checking each one for ripeness and quality, but his mind was not on the vegetables this morning. It was on Nayeli, wondering what she might say, how she might look, and if he would find the courage to speak more freely than he had in previous days. The moment he saw her approaching, his heart began to race. He straightened his back and tried to smile naturally, but his hands shook slightly as he picked up a tomato. He had never felt this kind of anticipation before, a quiet tension that made even simple actions feel significant. When Nayeli reached the stall, she greeted him warmly. "Good morning, Samuel," she said, her voice calm yet carrying a subtle excitement. Samuel managed a small smile, replying softly, "Good morning, Nayeli." For a moment, they simply looked at each other. The words, unspoken but understood, both felt that something important was about to happen, even though they didn't know exactly what it would be. Nayeli picked up a basket of carrots and examined them carefully. "Your vegetables are always so fresh," she said, her tone filled with genuine admiration. "You take such good care of them." Samuel's eyes brightened at her words. I try my best," he replied, feeling a small pride mixed with nervousness. He had never been praised for his efforts in such a sincere way. And her words touched him more than he could explain. For a while, they spoke about ordinary things, how the weather had affected the crops, which vegetables were growing well, and which ones needed more care. But then, Nayeli paused, placing the basket down carefully. She took a deep breath, her tall frame straightening as she gathered courage. "Samuel," she began softly, I want to tell you something." Samuel's heart skipped a beat. He nodded quietly, encouraging her to continue, though his own voice seemed to have disappeared in the excitement of the moment. Nayeli's eyes looked directly into his, and for the first time, she allowed herself to speak from her heart without hesitation. "It hurts being without a man," she said, her voice trembling slightly but carrying honesty. "Not because I need someone to protect me, or because I cannot handle life on my own, but because I want someone to see me for who I truly am. People notice my height, my strength, but no one sees the feelings I carry inside. I feel lonely sometimes, even when people are around. I wish for someone who understands me, who listens, and who values my heart." Samuel listened quietly, feeling a mixture of surprise, understanding, and empathy. Her words were unexpected, yet they resonated deeply within him. He realized that she was showing him her vulnerability, something rare and precious. He felt honored that she trusted him enough to share her feelings. For a moment, neither of them spoke, but the silence was comfortable, filled with unspoken connection. Then Samuel, finding his voice, spoke softly, his shy voice barely above a whisper. I've always been quiet, and I've always felt a little alone too. I work on the farm every day, and sometimes I think no one notices me. But when you talk to me, and when you share your thoughts, it feels like someone sees me, really sees me." His words were hesitant, but full of sincerity. He looked down at his hands, unsure if he could meet her gaze, yet he felt relief in finally expressing what he had carried quietly in his heart. Nayeli smiled softly, a mixture of warmth and relief spreading across her face. She had expected hesitation, perhaps even distance. But Samuel's honesty made her feel closer to him than ever before. She realized that her feelings were mirrored in his own experience, and that understanding bridged the gap between their different personalities. Her heart felt lighter, knowing that her trust had not been misplaced. They continued talking, sharing small stories from their lives that had never been told to anyone else. Nayeli spoke about growing up in the plains, the lessons from her parents, and the challenges of being different in a world that often misunderstood her. Samuel spoke about his days on the farm, the quiet routines that shaped his life, and the times he had felt invisible or overlooked. Each story brought them closer, revealing layers of personality, experience, and emotion that neither had shared before. As the morning passed, a gentle breeze rustled through the market, carrying the scent of fresh vegetables and the faint aroma of wildflowers from nearby fields. Nayeli and Samuel continued their conversation, now speaking more freely and comfortably than before. They laughed quietly at small mistakes, a spilled basket of tomatoes, a misstep on uneven ground. And in those shared moments, a bond was strengthened. The connection between them was no longer just curiosity or politeness. It was recognition, respect, and the beginning of trust. The villagers passed by, some noticing the unusual pair but unaware of the depth of their conversation. Nayeli, with her tall, strong presence, could have intimidated many. But Samuel's quiet calm balanced her energy perfectly. Together, they created a gentle harmony, an unspoken understanding that drew attention subtly yet meaningfully. No words were needed to show the closeness forming between them. It was visible in the way they listened, smiled, and responded to each other's presence. Later, Nayeli bought a few vegetables, thanking Samuel warmly. "I'm glad we met," she said softly. Samuel nodded, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. "I'm glad too," he replied. His words were simple, yet filled with honesty and emotion. It was the first time he had expressed something so personal to anyone, and the trust he felt in sharing his feelings made him feel braver than he had ever felt before. As they parted for the day, both carried a sense of hope and anticipation. Nayeli walked home with a lightness in her step, thinking about the possibility of friendship, understanding, and perhaps even companionship. Samuel returned to his farm, feeling an unfamiliar excitement for the future. A quiet joy in knowing that someone had seen his heart. Both understood that the day had changed something subtle but significant in their lives. That evening, Nayeli sat near the fire outside her home, thinking about Samuel's words. She realized that vulnerability could be powerful, and that sharing one's feelings could create deep connections. The pain of loneliness, which had felt heavy and unending, now seemed lighter. For someone had acknowledged her heart. She understood that her longing for companionship was not weakness, it was human, natural, and something that could be nurtured carefully. Samuel, too, spent the night reflecting on the day. He walked slowly through his small fields under the starlit sky. Thinking about Nayeli's honesty and warmth, he felt gratitude for her trust and a sense of responsibility to honor that trust with care and patience. His shyness no longer felt like a limitation. Instead, it reminded him of the care and thoughtfulness he could bring into the growing bond between them. He realized that the first step toward connection was simply acknowledging feelings, no matter how vulnerable or hesitant. Over the following days, their meetings became a gentle rhythm, each encounter deepening their understanding of each other. They learned to communicate not only with words but with gestures, expressions, and the quiet comfort of shared presence. Nayeli found that her loneliness was easing with each interaction, while Samuel discovered that his shy nature was not a barrier to forming meaningful bonds. It could be a strength when paired with honesty and care. By the end of the week, both Nayeli and Samuel recognized that their relationship had shifted. It was no longer just casual conversation at the market. It had become a shared space where feelings could be expressed without fear, where understanding and empathy could flourish. They had taken a significant step toward trust, a foundation that would allow deeper connection in the future. And so, the day ended not with grand gestures or dramatic moments, but with quiet satisfaction. Nayeli and Samuel had shared pieces of their hearts, had listened and understood, and had taken the first important step in a journey that would continue to grow. The quiet courage it took to be honest with one another had opened the door to something meaningful, a companionship based on recognition, respect, and the gentle warmth of two hearts finding each other. The days that followed the confession were filled with quiet anticipation for both Nayeli and Samuel. Their meetings at the market had become more than casual encounters. They were small moments of shared joy and understanding. Nayeli looked forward to seeing Samuel arranging his vegetables, his shy smile and careful movements bringing a sense of comfort she had not known in years. Samuel, in turn, found that his days seemed brighter with the thought of Nayeli's tall figure approaching through the morning crowd, her dark hair swaying lightly as she walked. One morning, Nayeli made a decision. She wanted to spend more time with Samuel, not just at the market but in the peaceful surroundings of his farm. She approached him as he was setting up his stall. "Samuel," she said softly, "I was wondering if I could come by your farm one day. I'd like to see how you work, and maybe help a little." Samuel blinked in surprise. He had never invited anyone to his home, and he had certainly never imagined someone like Nayeli showing interest. You want to come to the farm?" he asked cautiously. "Yes," Nayeli replied, smiling gently. "I want to understand your world. I think it will be fun." After a moment of hesitation, Samuel nodded. "All right. You can come tomorrow morning," he said, his voice quiet, but firm. Inside, he felt both nervous and excited. Having Nayeli at the farm would be unusual, yet he trusted her and was eager to share his daily life with her. The next morning, Nayeli arrived at Samuel's farm just as the sun was rising. The fields were bathed in golden light, and the air smelled of fresh earth and growing crops. Samuel greeted her at the gate, smiling shyly but warmly. "Welcome," he said. "I'll show you around." Nayeli followed him through the fields, observing the vegetables, the careful rows, and the small animals he tended. Samuel explained his routines, showing her how he watered the plants, fed the chickens, and prepared the soil for new seeds. Nayeli listened carefully, asking questions and learning quickly. Her strong hands were gentle as she helped him carry a basket of fresh tomatoes to the storage shed. Samuel watched her with quiet admiration, impressed by how naturally she adapted to the farm work despite her unfamiliarity with it. As they worked together, they laughed at small mistakes, Nayeli accidentally dropping a few carrots, Samuel tripping over a small rock. Each mistake became a moment of shared amusement, a way to ease the tension and grow closer. Nayeli admired Samuel's patience and dedication, seeing the quiet strength in his work. Samuel, meanwhile, noticed how Nayeli's presence brought a new energy to the farm, making the tasks lighter and more enjoyable. After finishing the morning chores, they rested under a large tree near the edge of the farm. The breeze was cool, rustling the leaves gently, and the world seemed to slow around them. Nayeli took a deep breath, feeling a sense of calm she hadn't experienced in a long time. "I like it here," she said softly. "It's peaceful, and I can feel the care you put into everything." Samuel looked down, feeling a blush rise in his cheeks. I enjoy it too," he admitted. "It feels nice to have someone here who appreciates it." They talked for hours, sharing small stories from their pasts, their dreams, and even their fears. Nayeli told Samuel about the plains where she grew up, the lessons her parents had taught her, and the ways she had learned to care for herself. Samuel shared his own life on the farm, the quiet routines, and the moments of loneliness he had felt over the years. With each story, their understanding of one another deepened. They were learning not only about each other's lives but also about how their hearts and minds could connect. In the following days, Nayeli began visiting the farm more regularly. She helped Samuel with planting seeds, repairing fences, and feeding the animals. Samuel, in turn, taught her about the subtle details of farming, the best time to water the crops, how to notice when a plant was struggling, and the little tricks he had learned over the years. They discovered that they complemented each other well. Nayeli's strength and confidence balanced Samuel's quiet, careful approach, and Samuel's patience and observation complemented Nayeli's energy and curiosity. Their friendship did not go unnoticed by the villagers. People began to whisper softly when they saw Nayeli at the farm, helping Samuel with chores or walking among the fields. Some were curious, others skeptical, but Nayeli and Samuel ignored the murmurs. They had found something precious between them, something that mattered more than gossip or opinions. Each day spent together strengthened their bond, and the judgment of others felt insignificant compared to the joy of shared companionship. One afternoon, as they were repairing a fence near the edge of the farm, Nayeli paused and looked out over the fields. "Samuel," she said quietly, "I never realized how much I needed someone to share these moments with. I've been strong for so long, but it's nice to have someone beside me, not because I can't do it alone, but because it feels better together." Samuel looked at her, understanding her words in a way that went beyond their literal meaning. "I feel the same," he said softly. "Being here with you, it makes everything easier, lighter. I never knew companionship could feel like this." Their connection grew not through dramatic events or declarations, but through the quiet rhythms of everyday life. They shared laughter, learned from each other, and discovered comfort in one another's presence. Nayeli found that her strength did not have to separate her from others, it could be shared and appreciated. Samuel realized that his shyness was not a weakness, but a quality that allowed him to connect deeply with those who valued honesty and care. As the days passed, Nayeli and Samuel began to anticipate their time together with gentle excitement. Even when separated by distance or routine, they carried thoughts of each other in their minds, finding joy in the simple memory of a shared smile, a gentle word, or the quiet rhythm of working side by side. Each visit to the farm became a chance to understand each other more deeply, to appreciate the small details of life, and to nurture a bond that was growing steadily, like the plants they tended together. One evening, after finishing the day's chores, they sat on a small hill overlooking the fields. The sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. Nayeli leaned back, feeling the warmth of the fading sun on her face, and smiled softly. "Samuel, I've realized something," she said. "I don't want companionship to be about grand gestures or expectations. I just want someone to share life with, to laugh with, and to care about. And I feel lucky that I found that with you." Samuel's heart swelled with emotion. He had never felt so understood and accepted by another person. "I feel the same," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I never thought I could feel this way. But being with you, it makes life better, simpler, and happier." In those quiet moments, they both understood that their companionship was more than friendship. It was a growing trust, a mutual respect, and an emotional bond that went beyond appearances. Nayeli's loneliness, which had weighed heavily on her heart, began to lift. Samuel's quietness and shyness no longer felt like barriers but gateways to a connection built on patience, understanding, and genuine care. As night fell, and the stars appeared in the sky, Nayeli and Samuel walked back toward the farmhouse. The world was quiet, the only sounds coming from the distant animals and the gentle wind. They spoke little, not because there was nothing to say, but because the silence itself was comforting. In that quiet, they felt the strength of their growing bond, a connection that had been nurtured carefully, patiently, and with sincere attention to one another. Over the following weeks, their companionship continued to grow. Nayeli helped Samuel with the farm regularly, and he in turn shared more about his life, his thoughts, and even his dreams for the future. They celebrated small successes, such as a particularly good harvest or a repaired fence, and supported each other through minor setbacks, like a storm that damaged part of the crops. Each shared experience strengthened their connection, showing them the beauty of partnership built on trust and understanding. Through it all, Nayeli discovered that her strength did not have to be lonely, and Samuel discovered that his quiet nature could create profound emotional depth. Together, they learned that companionship was not about dependency or expectation. It was about presence, respect, and mutual care. Their bond became a safe space where both could be themselves, free from judgment, and supported in ways that no one else had provided. And so, life continued. Ordinary in appearance, but extraordinary in meaning. Nayeli and Samuel had built a friendship and companionship rooted in respect, trust, and shared experiences. Each day brought new opportunities to learn, laugh, and grow together, strengthening a connection that was as gentle as it was meaningful. They had learned that the small, everyday moments working together, sharing stories, laughing at mistakes, and simply being present could create a bond stronger than any grand gesture, more lasting than fleeting excitement. In these shared experiences, Nayeli and Samuel found not only companionship, but a deep understanding of what it meant to care for someone fully and honestly. Their journey was ongoing, unfolding slowly like the growth of crops in the fertile soil, yet every day strengthened their bond, making it richer, more stable, and full of promise for the future. The days had grown longer, filled with the quiet rhythm of farm life and the gentle companionship that had blossomed between Nayeli and Samuel. Their bond, nurtured through small gestures, shared labor, and honest conversation, had become a part of their daily lives. Each morning, Nayeli would arrive at Samuel's farm, carrying a small basket of food or tools, ready to help with whatever needed doing. Samuel, once shy and hesitant, had grown more confident in her presence, learning to express himself openly and share his thoughts without fear of judgment. One particular morning, the sun had just begun to rise over the fields, casting a warm glow across the vegetables and the small farmhouse. Nayeli arrived earlier than usual. Eager to start the day with Samuel, she found him already tending to the crops, moving carefully among the rows of vegetables, his eyes scanning each plant for signs of growth or distress. When he saw her, his face brightened with a gentle smile. "Good morning," he said softly, placing a basket down and wiping his hands on his apron. "Good morning," Nayeli replied, her voice calm but carrying an unspoken excitement. Today felt different to her, as if something important was about to happen. She had been thinking deeply over the past weeks about the connection she shared with Samuel. She realized that her loneliness, which had once weighed heavily on her heart, had been lifted by his presence. For the first time, she felt a true sense of partnership, a companionship built not on necessity, but on choice, understanding, and care. As they worked side by side in the fields, laughter and conversation flowed easily between them. Nayeli helped Samuel with planting new seeds, showing a surprising dexterity in her movements. Samuel, in turn, taught her the subtle techniques he had learned over the years: how to know when a plant needed water, how to loosen the soil without damaging roots, and how to tend to the smallest details with patience. Their collaboration was seamless, each action building trust and mutual respect. At midday, they rested under the shade of a large oak tree at the edge of the farm. Nayeli leaned against the trunk, feeling the warmth of the sun and the gentle breeze. Samuel sat beside her, glancing at her quietly before speaking. "Nayeli," he began, his voice thoughtful, "I've been thinking about how much life has changed since you started coming here. I feel happier, more confident, and more alive. You've shown me that companionship doesn't have to be complicated. It can be simple, quiet, and strong at the same time." Nayeli smiled, touched by his words. "I feel the same," she said softly. "I used to think strength meant handling everything alone, but I've learned that sharing life with someone you trust makes you stronger in ways you can't imagine. I've been lonely for a long time, but now I feel lighter, happier, and more connected." For a while, they sat in comfortable silence, watching the wind ripple through the crops and listening to the distant sounds of the village. The quiet moments between them had become as meaningful as their conversations. Nayeli realized that this companionship was different from anything she had known before. It was not about dependence or need, but about choice, understanding, and the shared joy of being together. Samuel felt the same way, appreciating the balance of their personalities, their differences creating harmony rather than conflict. Later in the afternoon, as they finished the day's work, Samuel turned to Nayeli with a nervous but determined look. "Nayeli," he said, "I want you to know something. I care about you. Deeply. Not just as a friend, but as someone I want to be close to in every way I can. I don't want to be alone anymore if you don't want me to be." Nayeli's eyes softened, and a warmth spread through her chest. She had been feeling the same way for some time but had waited patiently for the right moment to express it. "Samuel," she replied, her voice calm but full of emotion, "I care about you too. I've felt this connection grow every day, and I trust you. I want us to continue this journey together, to share our lives, and face the future side by side." With their feelings now spoken aloud, a new chapter in their relationship began. It was a partnership built on trust, understanding, and mutual care. They did not rush into dramatic gestures or promises. Instead, they allowed their connection to grow naturally, strengthened by the shared experiences of daily life. Each day became a chance to nurture their bond, to support each other, and to find joy in small, ordinary moments. The villagers began to notice the closeness between Nayeli and Samuel more clearly. Some whispered, curious about the tall, strong girl, and the quiet, shy farmer. Others simply observed, appreciating the harmony between them. Nayeli and Samuel paid little attention to the opinions of others, focusing instead on the bond they were building. They knew that true companionship was not defined by public perception, but by the honesty and respect shared between two people. In the evenings, they often walked together through the fields, talking quietly or simply enjoying the peace around them. Nayeli would sometimes tell Samuel stories from her childhood, about the plains where she had grown up and the lessons her parents had taught her. Samuel shared his dreams, fears, and small moments of joy from his life on the farm. Each story, each conversation, deepened their understanding, and strengthened their connection. One particularly beautiful evening, as the sun set in shades of orange and pink, Nayeli and Samuel sat on a small hill overlooking the fields. Nayeli took a deep breath, feeling the gentle warmth of the fading sun. "Samuel," she said softly, "I've realized something important. Life doesn't always give us what we expect, but it does give us opportunities to find the right people. I feel lucky to have found you." Samuel looked at her, his eyes reflecting the colors of the sunset. "I feel the same," he replied. "I never imagined that I could feel this way. But being with you, it makes life brighter, calmer, and happier. I want to continue sharing life with you, through all the simple days and the challenging ones too." The evening passed peacefully, and as night fell, they walked back toward the farmhouse, their hands brushing together occasionally, a silent reassurance of their connection. They spoke little, for words were unnecessary. The comfort of each other's presence was enough. Nayeli realized that she no longer feared loneliness, for she had found someone who understood her heart. Samuel realized that his quiet nature could be a strength, allowing him to appreciate and nurture the bond he had with Nayeli. In the weeks that followed, their companionship deepened even further. Nayeli and Samuel worked together on the farm, laughed at small mistakes, and celebrated minor successes. They shared meals, walked through the fields, and spent evenings by the fire, talking quietly or simply enjoying the warmth of each other's presence. Each day brought new experiences, challenges, and moments of joy, all of which strengthened their relationship. One morning, after a particularly heavy rainstorm, the fields were soaked and muddy, but Nayeli and Samuel worked together to repair the small damage caused by the storm. Their teamwork was seamless, their laughter echoing across the fields as they carried tools, fixed fences, and tended to the plants. Through these shared efforts, they realized that life's difficulties could be met more easily with someone by your side, and that companionship could transform ordinary challenges into meaningful experiences. By the end of the season, the farm was thriving. The crops were healthy, the animals were well cared for, and the bond between Nayeli and Samuel was stronger than ever. They had learned to trust each other, to communicate openly, and to find joy in the simple moments of life. Their companionship had become a source of strength, comfort, and inspiration, proving that two people could grow together through patience, understanding, and mutual care. As the sun set one evening over the thriving fields, Nayeli and Samuel sat together quietly, watching the sky turn shades of gold and purple. Nayeli leaned against Samuel's shoulder, feeling the warmth and security of his presence. "I never thought I could feel this happy," she said softly. "Being with you makes life feel lighter, and I know we can face anything together." Samuel smiled, placing a gentle hand over hers. "I feel the same way," he said. "We've built something strong, and it will only grow stronger with time. I'm glad I found you, Nayeli." In that quiet, peaceful moment, both of them understood that their journey had reached a new beginning. Their companionship was no longer just about friendship. It was about partnership, trust, and the shared joy of life itself. They had found in each other someone who truly saw them, someone who valued their hearts, and someone who made life brighter simply by being present. And so, Nayeli and Samuel continued their lives together, facing each day with patience, care, and quiet joy. The farm flourished, their bond deepened, and their hearts were no longer burdened by loneliness. Instead, they discovered the strength that comes from companionship, the beauty of shared experiences, and the warmth of being truly understood by another. In the simple, ordinary moments of life, they found extraordinary happiness, and they knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, hand in hand, heart to heart.